to the show. Toby Harvard. How's it going, Toby?
Well, I've got a bit of a hangover today, so I'm feeling a little bit kind of on the road.
Oh
But
no.
generally, I'm okay. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Thanks for taking the time out of your weekend to join us. Sorry to hear that you perhaps tied one on a little too tight.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's time for a little break from all that. The hard living.
Well, you do live the artist rock star lifestyle.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah.
So, Toby, we have connected via Instagram, sort of through. I guess we kind of realized we had a mutual friend at one point, maybe like a few months ago or 6 months ago. But we were following each other on Instagram, and realized that you had really realized who you were, and that you had worked with a friend of mine, Carl Solomon, and are a really successful writer, and wrote one of my favorite movies, The Greasy Strangler.
The Greasy Strangler. But first, how do you know Carl? I mean, how did that all come about?
Carl, I worked with Carl. I used to live in LA for like a decade, and and we worked with him on some movies and some webisodes and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, Carl is just incredible. He's amazing.
Yes, he really is. Yeah, and when I saw that you had worked on Tropical Cocktails and written, I think, and created that, and I knew you must have known Carl, and had to connect the dots there and just start talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, Carl is incredible. Me and Jim, who directed Greasy Strangler and Cocktails, this was years ago, probably about 10 years ago. We made a short film in LA, and we were casting it, and it's about father and son on this hiking trip in the woods, and hate each other. They don't get on very well, and we were trying to cast the dad, and we weren't seeing anyone interesting. He was supposed to be this very kind of belligerent, kind of rude, dismissive, kind of a bully. And I think all the actors we were looking at were playing it very kind of, I think maybe a little bit too stern and mean. They were almost like kind of drill sergeant types. And then Carl suddenly comes along, and he really reminded us of Elliot Gould. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yep.
He was kind of like this fried up Elliot Gould. He had this amazing voice, so we cast him in that. And we actually originally we wanted Greasy Strangler to star him as the Strangler.
Yes, he told me that. Oh my gosh! So I saw Crabs like 10 years ago when he showed me it. He like sent me the link and was like, oh, I play the dad. So I watched it maybe more than 10 years ago. I mean, it was whenever you guys made it. It was like on Vimeo.
Ago. Yeah, there was like definitely a long time between that and Greasy. But there's a line in Crabs where he's talking about how much he loves to have these kind of long hot baths.
Amazing.
Because and then he goes, I have all these long hot baths. The city's just so greasy. And the way he said that, it just became such an in-joke with me and Jim. It's like everything, oh, greasy. It's so greasy. And that's how we came up with the idea, why don't we do a thing where Carl plays someone greasy? Like maybe even a Greasy Strangler.
Wow. Wow. So this is kind of an exclusive here. I just want to give a little backstory.
Crabs. No. We've talked about that in the past, I think. Because it definitely came from that greasy. But it's just the way he said it. There was something so sort of intriguing about it. And so, yeah, originally we wanted him to play the Strangler, and it didn't kind of work out in the end. But we made up for it with Cocktails, where we basically, I mean, he's kind of the star of Cocktails.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, he oh man, he is something else. A lot of fun to work with, and a lot of fun to just talk to. He's lived a pretty crazy life, and I do remember him telling me about the Greasy Strangler. He was like, "Damn, Elijah Wood wants to cast me in the Greasy Strangler." Or actually, I think it was something like that. I remember him talking about Elijah Wood and wanting to do the Greasy Strangler. I'm like, "Yeah, okay, Carl. Like, I'm not really sure I believe you."
Well, I mean, he is actually in the Greasy Strangler. He plays.
Yes.
I think he plays like 4 characters that kind of appear.
Yeah.
But when it came to Cocktails, again, like he was going to play quite a small part, and then we kind of turned up on the set, and he was just so funny. We just started adding him in every scene that he wasn't originally in, and just giving him a lot of lines, and you know, he loved it. He was laughing. It was amazing. It was quite magical to see because he's been around for so long, kind of working.
Yeah.
This was the first time he had like pages of dialogue, and he was the lead, and he was the star. He really kind of, it was quite moving to see him kind of just embrace it. It was really,
Right.
it was very sweet.
That's cool. Yeah, he really appreciated it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he's hilarious. He's just
Yeah.
so, you can't teach someone screen presence, and he's such a kind of, I mean, what's the word? He's like a Simpsons character in real life. Like he's just, I've never seen anyone quite like him on screen. He's just a complete, you know, he's a real find.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Tropical Cocktails, correct?
Yes, Tropical Cocktail.
Tell us a little bit about Tropical Cocktails.
It's a show that me and Jim made for Adult Swim, and it aired, I think, about a year ago, and it had a very kind of strange reception. I think it did really well. Like it got a lot of viewers, but I think it almost felt like it was too weird for Adult Swim, even.
Which is really saying something.
Which takes some doing for sure. I guess we never saw it as. I mean, essentially, it's like a buddy cop show, but it's not. Like I think we always just saw it as. It's almost more like performance art. It's like how far can you push a joke that probably wasn't that funny in the first place? Like
so you're sort of trying to shoehorn a joke. You're trying to push it till it becomes like super funny.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's an old kind of comedy thing. You know, you start with a joke and you keep going, and there's a kind of arc where it's funny, it's funny, it's funny, it's not funny, less funny, less funny, less funny, and then it comes around and suddenly it's funny again. And we wanted to like go back to it is funny again, and then it's unfunny again, and then it just fucking gets annoying. And it's an endurance test of comedy. And we did, you know, with Greasy Strangler, we definitely pushed it. You know, there's a lot of repetition and a lot of. It's just something I'm always guilty of. You know, I'll latch onto something that I find funny, and I will just keep pushing it and keep going. And yeah, it makes me very hard to be around sometimes.
Oh man, but you team up with you referenced Jim before. That's Jim Hosking. You team up with him a lot, right?
Yeah, we've written a lot of stuff together over the years. Because originally I used to do storyboards, so I was a storyboard artist on commercials, and he directed commercials. And so we, you know, this was like 15 years ago when we first met, maybe a bit less. But we just started kicking ideas around, and we started writing things. And you know, the stuff we wrote was so weird, and we never wanted to kind of compromise. We never wanted to water down what we found interesting and funny, and it just took so long to get something made. You know, like the road to Greasy Strangler was just, it's got to be like 20 scripts that were rejected by everyone.
Mm.
You know, finally, it was Ant Timpson, who producer from New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
who finally like gave us the chance to make something. You know, he found it really funny. He believed in it, and he shared it with Elijah Wood, who then came on and got the ball rolling. But you know, no one else would have made Greasy Strangler. So
What?
yeah,
What do you mean?
yeah. But, you know, we had an agent in London, and we gave him the Greasy script when it was done, and he said, "I refuse to send this out."
Oh
What
my
a
gosh.
jerk!
Yeah, well, no, he was just like, "This is like it's too much. No one's gonna get behind this."
Oh my god, it's so brilliant though.
Um, I mean, I don't know. Is it?
I love it.
It's really good.
I
Yeah,
absolutely love it.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
No, it's sweet. It's sweet to see that it's kind of there are people who really do love it, like really love it, which is
Yeah.
lovely. It's quite and then there's people who don't get it, and that's fine because it's the kind of film that clearly doesn't care if it's loved or hated. It's kind of I think that takes some. You really have to commit to that, and I think with Cocktails, it was the same thing. It was like this isn't a crowd pleaser. Like it's not designed to,
Uh,
Well, it's definitely one of my favorite things to watch, that style, and I really loved your new movie, Come to Daddy, as well, with Elijah Wood. I thought that was a great movie.
Thank you so much.
yeah, where do you draw that from? You know, everything is so. Do you just like kind of let go when you're writing?
It's a little bit of both. I think it's left brain, right brain, kind of alternating between the two. So you have to be very kind of analytic when you're structuring a story, and this is how it's going to play out, and this is the character's journey, and how is this going to work in scenes, and obviously, Come to Daddy, there's a twist in the middle of the film, so it's
Yeah.
kind of all building up to that twist, and then it's where do you go from there, and that's all very kind of analytical. But then when you come to writing, it's very, I almost want to just tap into my subconscious a lot of the time. And you just kind of, it's almost stream of consciousness. You just write. Because when people talk in real life, they don't rehearse what they're going to say. It's a blurting out of just whatever comes to their mind first. And I think that's how I write dialogue. Because I want it to sound like people haven't put any thought into it.
That's great. I keep imagining a scenario where you're on set of The Greasy Strangler and you have people like passerbyers who will say like, "Oh, you're shooting a movie," and then you say yes, and then they ask the title. Did that happen? Like, was there any moments like that where you told somebody, "Oh, it's called The Greasy Strangler"?
Yeah, I mean, the reaction is always, what the greasy strangler? That doesn't. How can you strangle someone if you're greasy? You're gonna not get a good grip on their throat. Like what? How does that work? Greasy strangler? What? Um, yeah,
I mean, the logistics are really what people find important about that. How can you strangle somebody who's so greasy?
exactly.
So, tell us a little bit about your Instagram page. It's really great, and yeah, you previously had called yourself a fetish photographer, and now you change it to fetish screenwriter.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think that sums it up. I guess. No, I think I'm the sort of person who does fetishize certain things. With screenwriting, there are kind of themes and ideas that I really just can't not explore. Like all my stuff is about families and fathers and sons,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a certain kind of approach to violence and arguments and people annoying each other and people being repetitive and being sort of impossible to be around. And I fetishize that, and I really sort of obsessively want to make every scene almost unbearable to watch in that way. And then with photography, I guess I fetishize, like I do a lot of film photography and I use a lot of
Yeah.
kind of neon lights and, I make these weird lighting rigs. They're very kind of fiddly and, I'm putting flashlights on things, and bouncing it off a mirror and then putting some colored plastic over it. I mean, I don't know. I think I really do fixate on any kind of artistic endeavor I get involved in. I'm not very good at just banging something out and forgetting about it. It's all or nothing, I think.
Right.
A lot of
Yeah.
your photography is out of focus and
Mm.
not showing the subject's faces. A lot of like backs turned,
Yeah.
which is awesome. It's like very warm and very cold at the same time. Is that part of the fetish of the whole thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I get an image in my mind and I really just want to it's quite a nice challenge. Like, how am I gonna get something from my mind's eye onto a screen? Like, how do I manifest an idea in the real world with the tools that I have? So yeah, for some reason I went through this phase of like shooting people's backs. It went on for a couple of years of really like wanting to perfect it. And I think from there I started messing around with focus and selective focus,
Yeah.
and having things in the foreground really blurry, and then if you shine a light on them, they become these kind of almost like blobs of color. They're almost like inhuman, and the background's very sharp. So yeah, I love to play around with that stuff. But I've actually, I've been so busy with writing recently. I haven't shot anything for a year or so. I need to get back to it.
Yeah, it's very good. Just a quick shout out to your website, tobyharvard.com, and it has a selection of photography there, and also shows what films you've been a part of.
Yeah, and your Instagram page is full of polls as well.
Oh my God, I almost forgot about this.
that are incredibly exciting, and I actually screenshot some of these polls and send them to Lance and another friend of ours,
really?
Jeff. Yeah, to get their answer on it, and it's multi-leveled because the question is always interesting, but the answer is always interesting too. So once you vote,
Right.
you get to see what percentage. So as from our perspective, like just seeing the question is good, and then I can send like, oh, you Lance were more in the majority, and Jeff was more in the minority. It's like a really fun social experiment. These polls.
No, I've always loved asking uncomfortable questions. Like at school, I would always ask my friends, for $1 billion, would you do X, Y, Z? And it's always amazing, like getting people to really like delve deep in these kind of quite uncomfortable questions. Um, I think what's interesting with Instagram, it's like because I can see who votes what. I think that really kind of skews the results. I think if they were anonymous, the results would be completely different. Like,
Oh, really?
yeah, because a couple of weeks ago I asked, you know, capital punishment, is it a good or bad thing? And the result was overwhelmingly it's a bad thing. But I wonder how different that would be if it was anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would be a different answer, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's me being cynical.
Yeah, I think that's a depends, For me, I think that's a kind of a case by case. Like I think there's someone like Bundy who just put him away. Like
You think?
put him out, just kill him. Like I don't I don't feel bad about saying that, but maybe in all circumstances it shouldn't be allowed in all murders,
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. But I've always loved asking these questions, and as
Yeah.
soon as I started getting like a decent following on Instagram, I thought, well, as soon as a question pops into my head, I can just beam it out there, and instantly, like you start getting a sense of what people are thinking. It's pretty interesting stuff.
It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Yeah, here's one. I just want to go over some of these because
Sure.
I think they're really fun. For 200,000, would you allow your entire lifetime's internet search history, including incognito searches, to be made available for all to see?
How much is this for?
$200,000.
I don't know. I don't think I would do that. Would you?
No.
I think I would.
Really?
I can explain away a lot of stuff.
That's true. That's true. And I think a lot of the feedback I got from that was we've all probably looked up the same stuff, pretty much. I mean, I think
Yeah.
all our search histories, we all know what it's going to be. It's more just airing it in public is such a kind of, it's such a declaration of, well, this is who I am. Like, this is what I'm into.
Right. Yeah.
This is what I'm worried about. This is, it can say a lot about someone, I think.
Yeah, it would just be an invasion of privacy, I think, for me that wouldn't necessarily be worth that amount.
No,
But
no.
yeah, I agree. Like I'm not searching for anything like I'm particularly embarrassed about. I think it's just the privacy thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the sensible answer for that.
I'm still doing it. Even if it was 100,000, I'd still do it.
Really?
Okay, well, How about for an all-expense paid first-class trip around the world, would you be prepared to kill an incredibly rare and beautiful dragonfly?
No, I wouldn't.
No,
Yeah.
I don't really.
No way.
I feel like I'd have blood on my hands.
Yeah.
I'd get guilty about stuff like that. I couldn't do it.
Well, I think what makes it easy, at least for me, is I could just take trips anyway. I don't,
Right.
you know, I don't have to go all the way around the world, but you know, I could take a couple trips here or there, and then a dragonfly that's rare and beautiful could live.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, 59% said no.
It's a lot of people saying yes.
That is a lot of people saying
Yeah.
yes.
I know, right? And in the first question, it was nearly 50-50. It was 52% said no, I pass on the 200K for showing my internet search history.
Yeah. I think the privacy thing is just a bridge too far. I think you're right.
Well, I'll take my 200K and I'll travel the world, and I won't even have to worry about the dragonfly.
That's true. You could do that. Yeah, and just not give enough about what people think about your internet search history.
Although, what year do I think it is? Like 1980? Like $200,000. It's not going to get you that far anyway.
No, sadly not.
Yeah.
Would you rather watch a 5-minute sex tape starring your parents or spend 18 hours buried alive with a few spiders in the coffin for company?
What part of your brain did this come from?
I don't know. It's scary how easily these things come to me. But I think my answer would be buried alive for 18 hours. Because you're
Really?
A lot of that you're going to be sleeping.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. I mean, the spiders, that's not pleasant. But watching your parents do that, I think there are some sights that can probably break your brain. It's just no one should see that.
Like how graphic are we talking about with the sex tape? Is there, are there angles?
Are there what?
Are there camera angles? Are there cuts, or is it just like?
I imagine it's like POV.
Oh God! Damn it.
For half of it, and then the second half, like they put the camera on a surface, pointing at them, so you get kind of the worst of both worlds.
Jesus. Okay.
I like how your own interpretation is kind of baked into the question.
Right.
Yeah.
Bury
me.
What would you do? Buried alive?
Bury me.
Yeah.
No way I'm getting buried alive.
Oh, but you don't. How could you live with yourself after seeing that? And how could you talk to your parent? You couldn't look them in the eye again, could you?
POV, Tim. POV. That's what put me over the edge.
POV.
Yeah, no.
That's a good point.
Oh, God.
Maybe I could just block it from my memory, but I don't know. The 18 hours buried alive. Jeez, the spiders actually are the least of my concern in that case.
What is it? Just the isolation, the claustrophobia?
Yeah, claustrophobia.
Yeah, I can see that. I think claustrophobia is truly unpleasant.
71% said they'd rather watch the sex tape.
I was shocked.
That is shocking.
Like, that really was shocking.
Wow.
There's been a few questions that involve live burial, and people just do not want anything to do with that. It's unthinkable.
Oh man, yeah, these are really epic questions. I remember some of these, even though some of these on the front page of your Instagram are from a while ago. I still remember sending these to Lance and Jeff. Like, here's another one. There's a red button. Each time you push it, $50,000 is deposited into your bank account. However, each time you push it, a random person dies somewhere. Do you push the button?
Well, that's a classic question. I mean, that's from. I think that was in some psychological textbook in the 60s.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God. Yeah. That sounds really familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Richard Matheson might have written a short story about it. And I think there's even a film based on it. I think it's called The Box.
The Box, yeah. I think
Yeah, The Box.
yeah.
So the idea, yeah. Would you do it? I don't think I could do it.
No.
It's just like, if you know you're murdering someone,
Yeah.
even if it's by complete remove, I just think, I heard something today about drone pilots, like drone bombers. A lot of them have PTSD just from pressing the button to release a bomb. They're not even killing someone. They're not directly even seeing the white of the eyes of whoever they're killing. But I think just knowing that you've taken an action to end a life, I'm sure you can't bounce back from that.
Yeah. I couldn't. I don't think that would be possible. I think what would be just as upsetting for me is if I did choose to do this and I was pushing a button and I was getting 50 grand in my bank account, someone's going to say, where, how are you making all this money? And I'm either going to have to lie or I'm going to have to say, oh, I'm pushing this button and someone's dying.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, no, I couldn't do it. Even if it was $1 million.
Yeah. Probably going to get arrested for tax fraud, too, if you did.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
I know. I mean, if you don't pay taxes on it, then you do have to pay taxes on it to avoid that. It's a nightmare. It's just a big headache.
Yeah, what do you tell them you got the money for? You have to...
Exactly.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, that's a no. That's a big no.
And you just keep pressing the button until the IRS dies.
I mean, that's the thing. If you press it enough times, you'll be I Am Legend. You'll be the last person left.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. 67% said no, they would not press it.
It's still a
a
lot
lot.
of people say yes.
Yeah.
But again, something like that, if it was anonymous, I wonder, would the answer be different? Would more people say yes? Maybe.
Yeah, good question. I didn't know that these weren't anonymous.
Oh yeah, I've been tracking your answers.
Oh man.
Well, just so you know, they are all honest because I didn't
They're all
know.
good.
Here's a good one for me and Lance. One of your closest friends is murdered. The killer is let free due to a lack of evidence. You find out the killer's name and address. Do you get revenge?
I don't even think twice about that. What's your answer, Tim?
Well, you don't think twice in which way?
Oh, I'm getting revenge.
Okay.
I've been waiting my whole life to get revenge on somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I would say because of the podcast we have, and I'm in this scenario, I'm imagining it's you that's murdered. I just feel like I'd get revenge by, doing a bunch of podcast episodes about this killer and making his life miserable.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking. Would you get revenge, like with a capital R?
I'd get revenge with all capital letters. Every one of the letters would be capitalized.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I would say yes. But then, if it actually came down to it, I don't know if I could.
That's a really interesting question. The aforementioned friend Jeff, he recently got me into, well, not recently, a few years ago, got me into a form of mixed martial arts, and we were having a conversation, and it was a really cool thought experiment. It's one thing when you're in a controlled environment, but he was like, would you be able to just break somebody's arm if you just saw them on the train and they were doing something and, you needed to do it? Could you actually do that? And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could, snap something like that.
But I don't know if I could punch someone even. Like, it just seems, it's such a kind of, it's a big thing to do. Punch someone in the head. And you see it all the time in films. It's just, and I write violent films and, I don't really think about it. It's just, he does this and that's the end of that. But actually, to punch another human being, have you guys ever hit someone?
Yeah. It's been a while though.
And what's it like? I must sound pelted, but
it doesn't end the way it ends in movies where one person is completely dominating and they're like, all right, now sit down, shut up, and they hit him. It's not like that.
Yeah.
it goes out of control.
Yeah.
People lose their
Right,
minds.
right.
Yeah, like one punch doesn't knock someone down like it does in a Western and they just don't get back up. It's like
Right.
the thing is you can't control someone's reaction. If you punch them, like they might like absolutely, pull out a gun for all you know.
Right, right. So, in this hypothetical revenge scenario, I don't know, like maybe I'd tinker with their car,
Mm.
or crash, or I'd leave slippery stuff on their doorsteps and they injure themselves that way. But I mean, actually, like committing an act of violence, I don't know if I could do it. Unless, obviously, I mean, I can't really imagine a scenario where my mind would go to that. Like, now I got to punch this person in the head.
Yeah, and you can't really get help either because if you did anything illegal, the more people who know about it, the better chance you're going to get found out.
And you have to be swift and exact and precise. I mean, if you go
Right.
in there and you take a swing at somebody out of revenge with, like, say, a baseball bat, and they don't
Yeah.
die right away, that's a mess.
Oh God. So, yeah, that's just nightmarish.
Yeah. Then you have to swing at them until they're dead. Like, what do you do at that point? Do you? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, do you talk to them? Is there going to be dialogue going on? Are you gonna? Do you change your mind halfway through? I mean, I imagine that must happen a lot.
I know, right?
Stopping halfway. I mean, obviously, you guys are the experts on it.
Well, we've never. I mean, I speaking for myself. I've never actually killed somebody. Just seen it in movies, and definitely have read about it taking a lot longer than it seems in movies.
Right. Right. I mean, with writing Come to Daddy, there's some real, like pretty shocking violence in that film.
Yeah.
I really wanted it to feel like, Elijah's character was, you know, a proxy for me or you, or, just a very level-headed person who's thrown into a situation where he actually does have to fight to the death and he does have to, potentially kill someone.
Right.
And, he messes it up and it's very awkward and it takes a long time. Adrenaline is surging. And, I really wanted to make it feel realistic in that way because I think one of my big gripes is the sanitized, consequence-free violence that you see in a lot of films nowadays. I think it's really, as a parent now, I was watching Star Wars: The Phantom Menace the other day, and the villain Darth Maul, he gets cut in half. It's a children's film. It's just unbelievable.
I wish
And
Jar
there's
Jar Binks
no-
get cut in half.
Yeah, I think a lot of people share that. But
You know what kind of bothers me with the way violence is depicted, especially on TV, is like those like the I guess NCIS type shows, or what's that one with James Spader? It's
The
where
Blacklist.
The Blacklist, yeah. I mean, you have these law enforcement people like FBI or the CIS types, and every episode they kill at least one person, one or two people, and it's in a gunfight or something. And,
right.
like, where is the PTSD here? Where's the counseling? Like, it's so unrealistic.
Yeah, exactly. I've been saying this for years. It's like James Bond will just he'll mow down 10 people. Like, he'll extinguish 10 lives and just not even break a sweat. His hand isn't shaking. He can go off and, like, sleep with the woman and make a wisecrack. And I just wonder, like, how safe that is. Children watching this stuff. Like, I don't believe that violent films can turn people violent, but I think when you are bombarded with this kind of very clean, very like Disneyfied murder on screen, I think it's got to have a psychological effect on people growing up, surely.
No, I 100% agree, and I think the way you depict violence in your films is a much more and I'm not just saying this because you're on an interview with us.
Mm.
That's how I want to consume my violence. I
Yeah.
like entertainment, and I like art that pushes certain boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's why your films are, I tend to gravitate towards those types of films, and I want to see violence that makes me uncomfortable, because
Yeah.
I never want to be so desensitized that I think it's not uncomfortable.
Right. I think, as soon as you are getting off on people being killed,
Yeah.
it's a bad situation to be in, But I think, the great filmmakers don't shy away from making violence very shocking. Like Scorsese is brilliant at it,
Yeah.
Aronofsky, David Lynch, even, it's just uncomfortable and it's not pleasant and it's not nice and it's messy and it has a kind of emotional impact.
Yeah, I remember Gangs of New York and watching that and being like, wow, the
Oh, yeah.
regard for life is just so not there in this movie.
Yeah.
People just die so quickly and easily. But on the other hand, in The Departed, I love when like DiCaprio and Damon get shot in The Departed.
Right. But it's shocking. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really unexpected and it kind of, there's nothing glamorous about it at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same with Taxi Driver. It's so funny we're talking about this, because I was just thinking the other day about Scorsese and how
Mm.
consistently good he is, like how consistently excellent he is from Taxi Driver.
Oh,
And that
yeah.
was a depiction of almost like that poll question. If you were going to get revenge on somebody,
Yeah.
you have this character that's on the brink, and he has the opportunity to do it. And it's, in his head, it's coming together. He even gives
Right.
himself a mohawk, and he's talking to himself in the mirror. But once the actual event happens, it's
Oh,
messy. It's unexpected. It's over the
yeah.
top.
Oh, God. It's just, I remember watching Taxi Driver. I mean, that's the film that made me want to make films. I mean, I think I saw it when I was about 10.
Yeah.
I was way too young to watch it. It was on TV in England. I stayed up late. I had a little TV in my bedroom. I sneakily watched Taxi Driver. And that ending is just so, any violence I write in the film now, I always go back to that scene in Taxi Driver. It's like it's so uncomfortable and it's just so horrifying and so unpleasant. It's kind of, but very responsible, I think.
Yeah. I mean, when you see the guy's fingers get blown off, I remember.
That's the bit that really, and the sound. There's
Yep.
something in sound in that scene. You hear like liquidy dripping blood spray. It's just so nauseating, and it should be. It should be.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Scorsese plays a character in that movie where
Yeah.
he has Robert De Niro's character Travis Bickle take him to see his girlfriend or his wife's, I guess she's cheating on him, but he
Yeah.
describes violence to Travis Bickle, and he
Mm.
describes what a 357 Magnum would do to a woman, and
Oh
like her
God.
woman parts. And
Right.
that's brilliant, because he's just telling you, like, the director of the movie is
Yeah.
telling the viewer how disgusting this is.
Right. No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and I think anything you can picture is going to be way worse than whatever they can show you.
Yeah.
That scene is just so unnerving. He's a really good actor as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you did the poll question recently, actually just yesterday. Do violent
Mm.
movies and video games cause violence in real life? And 77% said no.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's really, I think that's a difficult one. I think it's a difficult one. I think a film like Natural Born Killers or Clockwork Orange or Fight Club, kids aren't watching those. So I don't see the harm in that. But in something like, The Avengers, for example, those films all end with a big beatdown. It's kind of like, it, and it's, like 6-year-olds are watching this stuff.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, is that having a bad effect on them? Or am I just over cautious? Am I overthinking it? And has it always been, John Wayne? I was watching last night a film, Searchers.
Hmm.
The Taxi Driver is actually kind of weirdly based on.
Oh, really?
Uh, yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's John Wayne as this kind of Civil War veteran trying to track down a missing girl. It's really, you guys would love it.
Wow.
It's right up your street. Like it's one of the great missing person films, I think.
Yeah, geez, I gotta revisit that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was kind of a family film for its time, and a lot of murder, a lot of cowboys and Indians, people getting shot.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's just the way it's always been. Maybe it's a catharsis. Maybe people need a certain amount of violence in their entertainment. Maybe it's a kind of emotional release for people. I don't know.
Right.
I think that, we'll never know the answer to that question.
You can really get into some. You can really get into some classic conspiracies with the superhero movies and young kids watching them, and it's like a pre-training for kids getting in, or pre-training for young men to go into the military.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, something like Top Gun.
Yeah.
I think when that came out, didn't military
Yeah.
enlistment go through the roof?
Yes, big time.
Yeah, they set up sign up. The Air Force set up sign up booths outside of the theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, it was funded by the government. Most of all of the airplanes that they used in that, all the fighter jets, like that had a lot of government funding to make that movie.
That is incredible. Yeah, I guess they gave him permission to use their jets and all that.
Yeah, yeah. It and use the logo and everything, and they had a lot of say in the final cut of the movie and the writing of the script. There was. I think Kelly McGillis's character wasn't supposed to be. I think she was like a contracted trainer for them, but in the original script, she was part of the Air Force, and the Air Force said, no, we don't have women in this position. You have to make her an independent contractor.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous. Yeah, they have the new one too. They have the sequel that's coming out. It's supposed to come out this summer.
Yes. Do you think it's going to come out? I mean, what do you think? When are things going to go back to normal?
I don't
Um,
know.
I mean, what's
It's a good
the
question.
perspective in America at the moment?
Yeah, it's hard to say. As far as entertainment goes, though, I certainly don't mind renting something on VOD, like the theater at home thing. Like
Right.
that's, and as a parent, like it's much easier to do that than to actually get a night out or a day out at the movie theater. So I'm all for theater at home.
Would you not be sad if movie theaters went away, though?
I absolutely love them. So you're right. I
Yeah.
would be. I like the option, but the convenience of it at home is great. But I could see where there's a time where it's like, I'd only go see certain movies because either if they're not available at home or if they're certain movies that you kind of need to see on the big screen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big question mark at the moment. Is the new Christopher Nolan going to be
Right.
released? And, that's a guy, you got to see his films on the big screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of the impact goes away when it's small. I mean, obviously, great storyteller, filmmaker, obviously. But there's something about the grandeur and the kind of the scope of the big screen. It would just be so sad if that became a thing of the past.
You're right.
You know what I really want to see? You brought up the sequel to Top Gun, and I just had a fantasy that they'd shot half of it, and then they'll finish it with the actors doing like a Zoom call. So that,
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
I think that'd be hilarious.
That would be amazing.
And then they have their virtual background is like the them in a fighter jet or something.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a big hit.
But I would, if someone said you should do a poll question, if would you pay $20 for a VOD if Top Gun the sequel was released half live action and the other half was virtual background on Zoom?
I'm going to add that to my list of questions.
Awesome.
But also, I wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah.
Because you are experts, and there's a case that's kept me awake at night for years, Brandon Lawson. And I know you guys have done a lot of stuff about him, and you've spoken to his family. I mean, what is your take on what happened to him?
Yeah, I think that's one that is a rare case for Tim and I, where we where we agree. No, we typically agree on most on most things, but this is a rare one where we agree that this probably wasn't anything nefarious in the sense of
Yeah.
drug dealers tracking him down, or
Right.
Mexicans, or
The
police
police.
conspiracy. There's a large population of wild boar in that area.
Yes.
And poisonous snakes as well. And it's just the terrain is so it's really it's kind of
It's
like
rough.
wooded. Yeah, it's rough. It's wooded. There are pits. There are big shrubs that you kind of can't go through.
It's cacti.
Yeah, it's a little bit like desert. So it's I think our kind of theory is that he was on meth that night. So
Yeah.
says his brother, and I don't think there's any reason for us not to believe that. And I think he just probably ran farther than anyone's been able to search for him.
It's just so sad. I mean, because like everyone else, I heard the 911 call,
Yeah.
and it was such a red herring, that call, because it's so easy to kind of analyze it and read into it. And is that a gunshot in the background? And your mind starts turning it into this huge kind of pulpy drama. It almost becomes a kind of Coen Brothers film in your head.
Yeah.
And it was very moving listening to Kyle talking about it, because it kind of hammers home that this isn't fiction. This is like a real guy with real problems, and something very sad and very kind of tragically mundane happened. It was something very sobering about that, because you go on Reddit and you're kind of looking at theories, and it was drug cartels, or he witnessed a murder, or it's corrupt police or state trooper. There was a whole state trooper thing.
Mhm.
And there was something really, you could tell a lot of people were in a weird way disappointed. But that's not the right word. Not disappointed, it's more what they had in their mind was so much more cinematic and more thrilling and more
Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
And it's actually something very human and very kind of painfully real.
Yeah, accidental, I would say too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think, if we're right on that theory, but yeah.
And it's really cool to hear you say that, because part of the reason why we do this is to show people that these stories are human. These stories aren't written. They're not a Hollywood tale. And
Right.
these people are victims, and they have families who are suffering as well. And there's always a disappointment. You're right when you said that. There's a disappointment when a conclusion is reached or a hypothesis is presented that
Yeah.
doesn't have those elements of a storyline that people have created in their heads, because they know it from watching TV and movies and reading
Right.
true crime books.
But I wonder if, and I'm guilty of, creating the story in my head as well. And I wonder, why do we do that? What's the psychological benefit of us doing that? Is it to make it less terrifying, less painful?
Great
Because,
question. Yeah.
I'm a true crime obsessive. I love what you guys do.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really
Listen
cool
to
to hear.
a lot of podcasts, a lot of hours of going down these rabbit holes, and it's very easy to sensationalize, and I think a lot of people do. And that what I've always loved about you guys is that you give it a very kind of human, realistic. I remember going down the Maura Murray rabbit hole, and you guys were so good at just portraying her as just a normal person who got into a very, very bad situation, and it wasn't some big conspiracy. And
Wow.
Yeah.
The fact that the writer of The Greasy Strangler is saying these things is probably the top 5 greatest moments of my life.
No, I'm serious, because I had this awful flu a while back, and I was in bed for a week, and I went down the Maura Murray rabbit hole, and obviously, like all roads lead to you guys and the podcast you did about it, and all the appearances you've done, and yeah, like that case, there's something incredibly haunting about it.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, where you guys stand on what you think happened now. I mean, what's your theory now?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that those cases that we're talking about, Brandon Lawson and Maura Murray, are kind of similar in the way that there's a car left on the side of the road, and some people think they were both inebriated, and some people think they're both out there in the elements still somewhere. And we just said we both think that's what happened with Brandon Lawson, but it's funny that we both don't think that's what happened with Maura Murray.
So what do you think happened?
Well, I think she got into a car willingly.
So someone offered her a lift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Yep. And still, jury's out. Jury's out for me personally. I do always weigh the options as fairly, I guess, in my own head. But you can do this for years and years and years, and still every day something happens, and it's like, oh, okay, well that makes more sense than what I thought 2 days ago. But
right.
I guess you just kind of have to get down to looking at the actual area she went missing, and there's that area has a lot of bad people there, like convicted people.
Yeah.
It has a lot of good people too. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good people, but the more we looked into residents in that immediate area, there's some sick shit that happened at one point up there.
Yeah,
God,
there are.
yeah.
I don't know how different that is from most areas, though, if you really dig around, because what we find is that's kind of accurate pretty much everywhere. Maybe not these drastic specifics,
but you're right.
With the incest and everything that is really disturbing.
This is the thing. I mean, I think if you look under any rock, there's going to be creepy crawly.
Yeah.
I think it's quite an unnerving thought, but your neighbor who seems completely normal, who knows, like, what goes on in their mind? There's no way of knowing what kind of, like, weird, dark fantasies they may have, or what they've done in the past that no one will ever know about. I mean, that to me is terrifying, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I kind of go back and forth still on Maura's case, whether it's someone that she didn't know or whether it's someone that she did know, and whose car she got into. I don't really think that there was necessarily a tandem driver in the sense that that was an accident that was supposed to happen. I think if she got into someone's car that she knew, I think it actually could have been coincidental. Because
that was a huge coincidence, actually.
It would be, unless you were going the same way as someone and they were just like 10 minutes behind,
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. That's where I'm at, but I'm not sure of anything.
But, I feel terrible for her family. It's kind of like they didn't ask for the spotlight. They didn't ask for the attention. It's the same with, Brandon Lawson's family. Suddenly, all these eyes are on them. It must be so difficult to deal with. Like, plus the grief of, like, trying to process what's happened, your loved one's gone missing, and suddenly there's all this attention as well. Like, I can't imagine how you can, like, keep it together in a situation like that.
I don't know. We just talked to Heather Bish, who is Molly Bish's sister, and the Bish case was something that was huge in Massachusetts here. A few years ago, she's abducted, and Heather goes into what it was like in the immediate moments after she learned her sister was abducted, and what her family did, and how she witnessed. So Molly Bish was a lifeguard. She was 16 years old. She was a lifeguard, and they went down to the lake where she went missing from, and Heather and Molly's brother, they had to pull him out of the water because he wouldn't stop diving looking for her. And the police had to pull him out of the water, and Heather said something that, like, we all kind of know in the back of our head, but we've never asked anybody.
Mm.
She was like, and then you have to go home and you have to go to sleep.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
God, that's the thing.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
she said that, I got chills. I was
I
like, "That's
know.
so. What do you do?"
And
Like,
she's like, we don't know obviously where she is, but what if she's cold, And it's like, how are you supposed to
Oh,
sleep that night thinking your sister might be cold?
that's just heartbreaking to think that.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what would go through my head if I was getting revenge on somebody.
The pain that they caused you, like,
Exactly, or the pain
yeah.
they caused the person and their family.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
like an extended net. I mean, every missing person, every murder, every even accidental death, there are secondary victims, and that net is pretty wide depending on how well known the person is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think if you factor in, like media attention and like having to do press conferences and all that, like, I watched the thing about Madeleine McCann on Netflix and
Yeah.
just like the insanely grueling experience of the parents, like having to travel everywhere and like give press conferences and interviews, and everyone's analyzing everything they say and do. It's just like, I, d- how do you get through that? I don't know.
Yeah, everyone gets through it in a different way. We work with Bruce Maitland, and he started private investigations for the missing, and was gracious enough to invite us on the board of that organization, which does tries to do some really good work for families that still have loved ones that are missing. So some people go in that direction, and some people fall apart, and that's tragic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just awful. It's awful.
But
Yeah, and I guess no one would know what category they're gonna fall into until it even happens to you. But yeah, what we've been doing lately kind of is working with like the second generation, which is like the siblings, who were younger at the time, like in some of our
Right.
cases, who are kind of carrying the gauntlet now, taking the baton and running with it because their folks are older.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, something that always I just find unthinkable is the idea of, the parent of a missing child who dies with no answers. Like, to me, that's just the biggest gut punch. Like, I can't, it's hard to contemplate how kind of tragic that must be.
would you ever write something like that? Would you ever have a script that was on that serious tone?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think as time goes on, like, I'm less interested in, the repetitive, like, obnoxious, ridiculous comedy stuff. I mean, Come to Daddy felt like a real, like, conscious step away from all that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, like, tell a real story, and, it's absurd, but I'm trying to, like, get away from the ridiculous. And so, yeah, I would love to do something serious and dramatic, and, like, I, you know, I'm such a fiend for true crime, and, I'm fascinated by missing people cases. And, watching this film last night again, The Searchers, it made me think, fuck, maybe I need to do like a proper film where people don't sound like idiots and they actually talk like real human beings. But then I know what I'm like. I know as soon as I start writing, they're just going to be calling each other bullshit out.
Yes.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. But I hope that one day. I mean, I'm actually writing a film now for the studio, and it's very kind of like a serious. I can't rely on any of my old tactics.
Really?
Because, yeah, and it's a really interesting exercise in, like, you're developing a serious film, and there's no comedy, and you're not allowed to make it funny, and no one can call each other bullshit artists. And it's like people talking about really serious themes, and it's interesting. It's very. I think it's good to like get out of your comfort zone and just do something that you think is probably a little bit beyond your grasp, and hopefully rise up to the challenge. That remains to be seen. It might be a load of bullshit.
Is this Psychonauts or Spanking Shakespeare?
No, they were old things. They were really old things that were in development
Oh,
years
okay.
ago. Yeah, they never came to anything. But no, this is new. I don't think I'm allowed to even say anything about it. But
Oh, okay, cool.
already.
Spill the tea. Spill it.
No, I mean, hopefully they announce it soon. I think they want to like cast the lead actor first.
Very cool. That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I like Tim. I like how he was talking about doing a serious script, and the one that you asked about was something called Spanking Shakespeare.
Well, Francis Shakespeare, that was interesting. That was an adaptation of a book. It
Really?
was, yeah, it was really. This was This was like 10 years ago, maybe more. But that was at Paramount. It was. I'd written a script that I guess had like done the rounds in LA, and I had a manager, and they put me on this Spanking Shakespeare thing. But I think they decided they just weren't going to make the film. I don't know why. I can't remember. I think I probably fucked it up. Let's be honest.
No, probably not.
No.
There's so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, but that was before Greasy. I think Greasy was the first time I thought I'm not gonna try and like please anyone else. I'm just gonna write what I find funny and what Jim finds funny. We're just gonna do it for us, and screw it. If people like it, great. They're probably not gonna like it. Let's embrace that. Let's make it confrontational and make it punk. Some people aren't gonna get it, and that's fine. And I think that was a real turning point. I think it's very liberating to not care, because I think the kind of films that I hate are the kind of very needy films that they want to get a laugh and they want a pat on the back, like, isn't that clever, isn't that funny? I think you can't not go to the lowest common denominator when you're trying to please people, whereas I think when you're trying to displease people, it frees you up to just really have fun and experiment. So I've
Right.
been trying to like carry that into everything since Greasy.
Awesome.
Sometimes it backfires horribly. You get your Adult Swim show cancelled.
Oh. Well, I think it was great, and I know that found a big group of fans too, rabid fans too.
Yeah. I think it's always very sweet when you see, like, sometimes I get sent pictures of people with Greasy Strangler tattoos, and they have the lines from the film tattooed on them.
Yes.
It's like, partly feel sorry for them because they're stuck with that forever. But it's also, yeah, it makes it worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, it is cool to have an effect on such people, and whether you know it or not, you're having a cultural effect on what they and on how they're entertained.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the same with you guys. You're providing this like incredible. Like I don't think a day has gone by when I haven't listened to a podcast. I mean, that does seem like the future of entertainment in a way. It's like I there's always a podcast playing in my house. I have to have something on constantly, and I think a lot of people are probably like that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And the business is changing pretty much every day, and it's growing. And
Yeah,
if Tim and I were lucky to get in it, so many years ago. But even when we got in it, it wasn't. We probably could have gotten into it like 5 years before that, and
really.
then just wrote it all the way through. But if it just takes like you just got to keep doing it, just like anything. Like you write your screenplays. Some people are gonna like it, some people aren't. But you
Right.
just got to keep doing it, and eventually you end up being that podcast that is in people's homes.
Yes, exactly. And out of interest, like, do you guys ever get bad reviews, and do you ever look at the bad reviews, and how do they affect you?
Oh my
Because
god.
that's kind of like what I'm sort of not dealing with, because it's a bad thing, but I find it interesting, like reading reviews of Come to Daddy and looking at the bad ones and kind of, I don't know.
Not only do we get bad reviews, we print them up and we frame them. That's no
Now,
joke.
why is that? I mean, what's the thinking behind it? Like, how do you react when you first see someone? Let's say let's say I wrote a review saying they're annoying, they're boring, they're shit. I hate them. I mean, how do you process that?
I guess it's sort of case by case.
Right.
The one that we printed out was an email to us about a moment in one of our episodes where we kind of made like a joke, but there was a little bit of purpose to the joke. It was like kind of, I guess we could explain the specific scenario because otherwise it's kind of hard to discuss. But we were talking about the Brianna Maitland case, and there was someone that the private investigator went to go see, and he was like, yeah, this woman, she kind of like makes videos for a living, and we were like, oh, like YouTube, like us, and he laughed, and he was like, no, different kind of video, and Lance is like, well, what's the URL, just for research, and then we moved on. We kind of chuckled and moved on, and we didn't even say what it was. And
Right.
and we got an email calling us disgusting and how they're never listening again because of that joke. But the joke actually beat home the point of what the site was.
Right. That's so. But for someone to go out of their way to write you an email.
Yeah.
And they even said that they'd listened to us for a while, but this one moment, like we've been doing, this is what really made me laugh, and it still makes me laugh thinking about it. We've been looking into Maura Murray's disappearance, Brianna Maitland's disappearance, working with families, law enforcement, but this one comment that wasn't even that bad, it was very innocuous.
Right.
That's what put him over the edge.
I guess you just wonder, like, what happened that day for them.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? And, like, it wasn't you; it was them.
Right.
Surely.
Yeah. Actually, that's exactly what. That's kind of our thesis, I guess, on that. Like, if I don't think either of us look at like iTunes comments very often. At all, because you do inevitably see some negative ones, and I don't know. I just shrug. Because I assume those people actually listen all the time anyway, and they don't stop listening, even though they say they might. I don't know if that's a me thing or if that's actual reality. But I like to quote the movie Ralph Breaks the Internet because there's a scene in that movie that said exactly what you said. It's not about you; it's about them.
Yeah. I mean, I think with podcasts, definitely. And I guess with films, I guess, what I do and the way I write is it's deliberately uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people get upset by the tone sometimes because it's not punchline jokes. It's just really awkward conversations. And a lot of like people with very strange, idiosyncratic ways of talking. And a lot of people just, fair enough, don't find that funny and they don't find it engaging. So it's kind of like there's nothing you can do about it. So
Well, it's interesting that you say that because you even referenced it in the beginning of this conversation where you said people don't talk like that. People don't talk with punchlines. People oftentimes talk very nonsensically, and I don't even know if that's a word. See, I'm doing it right now. But no one rehearses their conversation, and maybe it's uncomfortable for people because it reminds them of them sometimes.
maybe. I mean, I look at a film like The Social Network, which I love. I think it's brilliant. Fincher, brilliant. Aaron Sorkin, amazing writer. But it's so heavily kind of written, and it's very poetic, and it's very funny, and it's very slick. But to me, like I could never write like that because I'd want characters to make mistakes and like get words wrong. Like to me, I love that. I find it so interesting, and maybe it's not for everyone, but yeah, it's fascinating to me just the way people talk and the strange kind of like mistakes and awkward bumps. Like I'm doing it now. I'm kind of grasping words out of the air, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot
You know,
more
I want
real
to-
life, than a rehearsed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, because that is one of the things about most movies. Like you just do a second take if someone flubs or someone like stutters for a second, unless it's in the script.
Yeah, but I love the films that keep the mistakes in.
Yeah.
I love when actors kind of bump on lines. You can tell they're kind of fumbling and they've probably like gone off script a tiny bit, and that's why I love Carl. Bringing it back to Carl,
Yeah.
he's, you give him a line of dialogue and what he will come out with, it's not necessarily what you wrote, but it's his version of some kind of weird whatever his brain has done to your writing. Suddenly it's coming out. It's so greasy.
Oh my God, you're exactly right. About Carl specifically. I remember there was one line that he has in Pan Man. That
Right.
he plays a chancellor of a culinary academy. He's got one scene in this movie, but he's very funny, and he sings "Amazing Grace." But there was one scene that was there was one line that was he's talking about this cake that he baked. And the line was, "I baked this cake myself," because later, the cake is proven to have some weird stuff inside of it. But he said, "I baked this cake by myself." and, and just adding that one word, like I don't know how many people cook cakes together, but it took away sort of what the point of the line was, but it added a hilarity to it.
That's the thing, like with Carl, with Tropical Cocktails particularly, he would completely change the meaning of a whole scene. But the way he said it was so funny. It's just like, well, I guess the scene is about that now. Because that was really good.
Oh my God.
Isn't that just? I feel like that borders on brilliance, really, because
Oh yeah, completely.
yeah, Tim, you just said he added one word. And he gave this character, he added one word that has two letters.
Yep.
And he gave that character a whole backstory. a whole weird backstory.
Yeah, exactly. Like he almost made it. Yeah, it's almost like too conspicuous. You're like, wait a second, he didn't cook this cake alone.
Instantly, I imagine this like character smiling in his kitchen, baking a cake with an apron on, and so proud that he did it by himself.
Amazing. It's very, creates a whole new dimension, adds layers of subtext, the backstory. It's brilliant.
Just two letters. He added two letters.
That's all he needs. 2 letters.
It's all the room he needs.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much, Toby, for coming on here and spending some time with us. This has been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again because I've definitely got a lot more true crime questions I want to run by you. So
perfect.
I'll write them down. I'll remember them next time.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully this took your mind off your hangover for a little bit.
I feel a lot better now.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm gonna start to go tie one on actually.
Yeah, we gotta start feeling bad now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure talking to you.
The story just keeps playing out. There's